Hello and welcome to another edition of Pulp Picks. My name is Patrick.
I'm Fritz.
And we're here to give you this week's reading recommendations on New Comic Book Day.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of those weird comic book days. So DC is still technically in that Tuesday release.
Mm-hmm.
So their releases were still in April. And whenever there's a 5 release week month, DC always does annuals. So DC's a bunch of annuals this week and a special. Marvel is kicking off Blood Hunt, and then we've got some other new books starting. So there's a whole bunch of stuff, but this is the first time in a while that we've had all number ones up here. So let's dig on in. And speaking of Marvel event books.
Yeah, so my pick this week is Blood Hunt, both the normal version and the red band version. So basically kind of like the gimmick we're doing here. It's this big vampire event, like the vampires have like covered the earth in dark force energy, blocking out the sun so they can take over. And because of that, you know, vampires, things are going bloody. They decided to have like both like the normal version and then the red band version, which is actually the version I read. I did compare them when I came in this morning, but where there's different art to kind of like drive home just like how violent this is. Cause like there's stuff in here which is like, oh, it's just like a dead guy with a little blood around him. It's just like, oh, half his body's gone kind of thing. Like,
yeah.
So like there's that. I think there's like some extra pages here and there. But regardless of which version you get, it's a super fun read. Like it's by Jed MacKay. He's been doing so much of Marvel the last couple of years.
Yeah, we picked so many of his books.
Yeah, his Moon Knight, which is also out this week, which if you are getting, you should read before this because it leads directly into Blood Hunt.
You don't have to, but it does provide actually all of it. Avengers, Moon Knight, all the books that he's writing
his
right
Avengers stuff kind of ties in.
Strange.
Yeah, Strange. I'm curious now, almost like because he's going to be writing one of the new X books coming out this summer. Maybe something from here is going to connect into that.
Oh,
somehow.
sure. Yeah, not that X-Men ever do anything with vampires.
Yeah, but yeah, his like. You know, if you're getting a MacKay book, you're going to have a good time. They've got Pepe Larraz on art, who you probably know best from doing House of X with Hickman at the start of like the whole Krakoan era. He's done some other X-Men stuff. It's
excellent.
Yeah, he did some stuff with Mark Millar over with his books. Like his stuff is just always amazing, and here is no different. Like never has like a violent, bloody end of the world look so good.
It's really gorgeous, and you know, kudos to Marvel to leaning into that. And I guess, you know, given the 2 different options or whatever is nice too. That gives people a choice. But yeah, I really, man, when they started doing the solicits for this, I was like, oh crap, here we go again, another Marvel event. It's gimmicky, and then I was like, oh, but MacKay's writing it. His vampire stuff in Moon Knight has been pretty solid.
That's the thing. Like, this is one of those events where, like, the event itself, like, sounded, like, fine, but, like, when you get to the creative team, it's just like, oh, this is probably going to be really good. And then, spoiler alert, it is really good. And, like, again, like, regardless of which version you want to go with, you're going to have a good time. Personally, I would recommend the red band version. I feel like it's just kind of the, like, more authentic version.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert, it is obviously the much more, like, violent version. Like especially like there's like a big reveal in this issue, and the difference in terms of like how it's handled in one versus the other is very like night and day. No pun intended.
Yeah.
But
are you saying there's a big split between the 2?
Yes. Yeah. Very much so. But no, it's a good start. They're doing that kind of thing where they're kind of like really wanting to like chug through it. So the issue 2 also comes out this month. 3 and 4 come out next month, and it ends in July. So like it's going to be like a quick one. So you're not having to be worried about like being strung out over a couple months for it. Yeah. So if you love your Marvel event books, you're going to enjoy it. And even if you don't, I think you're still going to have fun with this one. Yeah. Like it's a good bloody time. Yeah.
Well, and I think definitely readers of Moon Knight. That's of the Jed MacKay titles right now. That's the one that we've got the most subscribers to. We sell the most issues of. His Avengers run has been very good. His Doctor Strange run has been very good. Also, so if readers of any of those books.
Also, if you can tell from the cover, Blade's here. So if you love Blade, would definitely recommend checking it out.
Yeah, the Daywalker.
Yeah. But speaking of things from Marvel that are very violent and bloody.
Gratuitous violence,
Yes.
kind of the theme.
Mhm.
I went with Get Fury #1, and this is Garth Ennis's new book. One of the all-time most beloved Punisher writers.
I would say so.
His Punisher Max series is,
Which
iconic.
this is a Max series, so that
Yes.
kind of gives you an idea of what you're in for.
Yeah, so parental advisory, I guess. I don't know. Like, this book is graphic, and it's graphic on a number of different levels. There's graphic violence. It's a Punisher book.
Yeah.
But there's also, so it's taking place in 70s now.
Mhm.
That's the setting for it, and both Frank Castle and Nick Fury are there doing separate things.
Mhm.
So the language that's being used, the way that people are treating each other and talking to each other, like, there's a lot of
I'm
icky feelings that go along with reading this book.
there's just like this weird disconnect in my brain reading where it's just like, man, I'm not used to seeing this many F-bombs in a Marvel comic.
Yeah, well, and there's I don't know, there's a bunch of language that it's not for the faint of heart.
Yeah.
The reason that it's being used is it's trying to be period authentic.
Mhm.
So it definitely feels that way.
Yeah.
At least from my experience in watching movies and I'm from the generation where there were a lot of Vietnam movies.
Yeah.
A lot of them were graphic.
Yeah.
Platoon and Full Metal Jacket and Apocalypse Now were all movies that, I watched on video back in the day. Yeah.
Yeah, basically you should be prepared because there's going to be some uncomfortable language for sure.
Yes, definitely. And violence. The violence gets pretty graphic too. And I'm sure that that's only going to get worse. It's really interesting because it starts with the very first panel that you see is a member of the North Vietnamese army. He was a general in the North Vietnamese army, and he's apparently our narrator for this story. And that's setting up kind of I'm wondering where that's going, right?
Yeah.
Like there's a reason for that to happen. But so the gist of it is that Frank Castle gets called in to run a Black Ops mission. Nick Fury has been captured by the enemy. That's the gist of it.
Yeah.
And that's the start of it. So it's really good. I was unfamiliar with the artist Burroughs.
I think he's done
really
some
good.
other work with Inus on Punisher books before.
Okay, sure. I'm so bad at remembering all that stuff, but it really did a really good job of feeling like in the scenes where they're in the thick of the jungle and there's a bunch of American military people and we're not sure Cambodian militia or what have you.
There's a lot of
fighters.
different factions that are kind of involved.
Yeah.
And I'm sure we'll only complicate matters as it goes.
For sure. Well, and that level of minutia adds to the authenticity of it, and I'm not sure how much backstory and
I know for his war stuff, Inus is usually pretty well versed on that stuff.
He seems like a very detail oriented person,
Yeah.
so I'm sure that he studied up on a lot of this stuff. But yeah, the vibe is good. It is definitely one of those where it's like watching one of those movies like Apocalypse Now or Full Metal Jacket, where you're like, this is making me really uncomfortable. The story is worth experiencing, but it's not like, oh, I love that movie, it was so much fun. Like, it's one of those where you're kind of, it sets your teeth on edge kind of thing. But it was really good. And if you're a fan of The Punisher, I recommend it. If you're a fan of, gritty war stories, it's not quite right, but you know what I mean, where it's less about like the bravado and the American exceptionalism, and it's more about blood and mud and kind of the true horrors of war kind of thing. That's definitely gets that aspect of it. So
definitely not G.I. Joe.
Definitely not G.I. Joe. Correct. Yeah. Although the new G.I. Joe is darker, but it's in a more fantastic kind of way. And it's less grounded. This is grounded.
But hey, speaking of things that are
fantastic,
and definitely not nearly as like violent and bloody as the other stuff here.
More violent than the cartoon.
Kind of. I mean, yeah. But Space Ghost #1. So this is the latest in a series of Dynamite has been doing a bunch of like titles based on old cartoons. He had Gargoyles, Cindercats. This spoiler for Free Comic Book Day this weekend. They're doing a new Johnny Quest comic.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool. But here we got Space Ghost. Whether you know him from the original 60s cartoon or if you know him as everyone's favorite late night talk show host, I went in like expecting to be because like David, I can't remember if I'm pronouncing his last name right, but Pepos, I think so, yeah. He's been doing a lot of stuff here and there, both at like Marvel and indie stuff for like the last couple of years, and I've always enjoyed what I've heard of his stuff, so I'm just like, okay, let's see what he does, and I think he does a really good job here.
I was really impressed. So this is kind of an origin story for Jason Jan.
Yeah.
And Blip. And I thought that was a really cool way to start it. We get some fan favorites showing up right away, but they're totally different. They're reimagined. But in a like, I watched Space Ghost when I was a kid, and now I'm growing up and I'm ready for a more grown up version. I mean, it is not Blood Hunt. It is not Nick Fury. But people die.
I mean, yeah, like, I definitely think, like, it... Like, I don't know if I'd say adult, but, like, I could see, like... I don't know, it's hard... Because that's the fear. Because, like, I've seen so many times where it's just like, oh, here's his kid's property. Let's just make it, like, super, like, over-the-top, like, edgy and whatnot. And it's just, like, this isn't that. This is, like, still, like, very much, like, a traditional superhero story.
Yeah, it's, like, mainstream superhero level of violence.
Like, you get these moments where it's just, like, it feels like a very Batman thing. It feels like a very Superman thing. Well, still, like, having its very, like, distinct flavor, just like, yeah, this is Space Ghost. Like, he's kind of, like, his own, like, flavor of superhero still.
Have we seen Jonathan Lau on something before?
I know he's done other stuff for Dynamite. I'm not sure, like, what else outside of them, but he's done a bunch of other, like, superhero work for them.
Nicely done. I thought, really a good choice. As I was reading it, I kept thinking, like, wow, this is cool. It kind of, I'm not sure exactly what it was, but it was a little reminiscent of Ramita much earlier in his career when he was kind of making that tiny bit of a shift towards that kind of more Frank Miller, boxy kind of style that he's now known for. Yeah. At the very beginning of that. But more towards his classic Ramita Sr. type influence. And it had, the art quality had kind of a Fantastic Four vibe. I was like, I could see Jonathan Lau in a Fantastic Four book, which is great because they're out in space and, it's kids and science.
I think it helps that, like, because I don't know if I mentioned this before, but, like, not to be me, but, like, there's a lot of artists that do struggle drawing kids. Like,
yes, it's hard.
It is. Like, the amount of times I've seen where it's just like, oh, this is, like, just kind of like this weird skinny body and an adult head just plopped on it.
Yeah.
And, like, no, like, they actually, like, look like kids. They're written like kids. Like, they're, like, scared, but still, like, trying to, like, keep their heads on their shoulders. They're maybe too trusting of certain characters. Like,
it's kind of like when you see somebody gets a tattoo of their baby.
Yeah.
And it's just like, oh, that ain't, no. That's not a baby. That's a gremlin.
Yeah. But no, like, they each, like, kind of, like, they get their moments to shine. Space Ghost, obviously, is super cool. Throughout this entire thing.
So cool.
You get, like, I love how they get to, like, kind of, like, use his power sets and, like, he gets, like, this really good punch in at the end. I just loved it.
Yeah. I did struggle a little bit with hearing the coast-to-coast voices popping in. There are moments.
Yeah.
Taking Space Ghost seriously is going to take a couple issues. Just because that's so... ingrained into my mind. That show was so iconic. It put Cartoon Network on the map. Yeah. So, which we were talking about the other day. That and C-Lab just really blew up. And, yeah.
Where's our C-Lab comic?
It's got to be coming.
I only say that,
written by Eric Estrada, right?
I honestly only say that, like, half as a joke. Like, I'd read a C-Lab 2020 comic.
I would totally read this version of it. Yeah, absolutely. Well, it has been another great week. It's always this kind of end of the month, beginning of the month transition. You always get fewer titles. Marvel's got a ton of heavy hitters this week. There's a number of good indie books that are coming out, and a bunch of number ones that you can start picking up on. So we did, Space Ghost was one of those titles where we only had like 2 people signed up for it when I had to do the order. So I was kind of projecting like, okay, well, how much do we need? And I went light. And so as people were signing up, as we got closer to it, I hit the emergency button and ordered a bunch more. And I believe that we're going to have about 50% more coming back in. But hurry down if you want to read it this week, because we've got a handful of copies on the shelf. If we run out, then, we'll Dynamite prints a ton. Hopefully those will show up next week after, something like that, and we'll be able to do it. But don't take that chance. Beat the other customers down to get it. And like you said, read Moon Knight before Blood Hunt. This Saturday, free comic book day. It's the biggest day of the year at every local comic shop. Last year we had an amazing turnout. It was crazy. We've got, I don't know, like 10 people working at the store just to be able to kind of handle traffic and everything. We're going to have somebody doing cosplay, so you can get your pictures with cosplay. I'm not sure which characters, but I know that he does a few. So there will be some different ones. We're going to have face painting. Of course, there's like 48 titles or something like that. I don't think that we got every single one. There were a couple that I was like,
we got all like the major ones. So we got the DC stuff, Marvel, Image, Dark Horse, all that.
All the big properties. And then there's also some other free books that we're going to be throwing at people as well. It's always a great time. But free comic books. I mean, how can you say no? And there's a few that are going to be really cool. That Energon Universe one, I believe that's 3 all new stories because they're printing it the following week. So, a lot of times at Free Comic Book Day, it's super cool and it's fun, but a lot of what you get is like reprints of stuff or stuff that's kind of inconsequential. But it feels like this Energon Universe one's going to be impactful. So.
There's that. For Marvel, they've got stuff teasing out some of the new Ultimate stuff, Spider-Man, X-Men After the Fall of Krakoa. So DC, they've got for their new Absolute Power. Their big event stuff coming this summer, which we got the new previews in for DC. You can check all out that there.
The publishers are really leaning into this being a big event that's got something worthwhile for even regular comic readers to show up and get a sneak peek of what's coming up. So
also, it's drawn by Dan Mora, so it's going to be one of the best looking books this year.
Dan Mora's so good. So get on down. Be sure to like, follow, subscribe. Leave your comments. We've been getting some great comments lately, and we really appreciate that. Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll look forward to seeing you throughout the week, but definitely on Saturday. Get down here. But don't wait until then to pick up your Space Ghost, because it will
Coming today.
Coming down. What are you doing? Get down here. Don't drive and watch this video.
All right, don't do that.
We'll see you later, and have a great week.
Oh, you'll get that out of me. How about that?